Hello and welcome to The Point. I'm Kwon So-ah. Gender issues have emerged as a central topic within our society following the 20th presidential election earlier this month. Fierce debate is raging among Korean politicians and ordinary citizens over President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol's pledge to abolish the nation's gender ministry. Now, for this edition of The Point, we delve into the major gender issues that are creating social divide and ways to resolve them. Gender divide emerged as a key issue during South Korea's presidential election this month. Multiple media outlets claim this may even be one of the major reasons for why President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol won the race by a razor-thin margin. And we have our Lee-Sera standing by for more. Sera?
That's right.
Now, President-elect Yoon pledged to abolish the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family, saying it's no longer needed and also widely known as a bid to attract young male voters. But Sera, how are other countries dealing with similar issues?
That's right.
For an in-depth discussion on this heated debate, I bring in three experts. In our studio, we have Kim Jo-in, Assistant Professor at KDI School of Public Policy and Management. Welcome, Professor Kim.
Thank you for having me.
And Hwang Myung-jin, Professor of Sociology at Korea University. Welcome to the program, Professor Hwang.
Thank you.
Also connecting live via Zoom is Rosa Friedman, Professor of Law in Conflict and Global Development at the University of Reading. Thank you for joining us. President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol has completed putting together his transition team made up of 184 members who will be devising his administration's policy planning, which includes not a single official from the nation's Ministry of Gender Equality and Family. The transition team has been using the term developmental abolishment in a bid to scrap the gender ministry. Now, in that regard, Professor Hwang, let's start with you. What are your views on the current talks in regards to the fate of the gender ministry? So rather than being about the physical existence of the ministry, it's about solving the issues at hand regarding gender equality. All right, what's your take on the same question, Professor Kim? Now, in the case of the UK, Professor Friedman, the government created a new position of Minister for Women and Equality back in May 1997 to better address women-related issues. And a decade later, in 2007, it founded a Government Equalities Office, which is spearheading the nation's policies related to women, sexual orientation, and transgender equality. What has led the country to make such substantial steps to promote gender equality and devise policies for women? I see. So improving women's rights and equality issues expands into various sectors. Now, back here in Korea, South Korea's gender ministry started out as a small government department under the Kim Dae-jung administration in 2001, which then was expanded after taking on the role of formulating the nation's child care and family policies under the Roh Moo-hyun administration. Now, touching upon the criticism towards the ministry, Professor Hwang, what do you think are the factors that hindered the ministry in really properly serving its role? The division seems most apparent among young men and young women in their 20s. So can you explain this social trend? And we're also curious to know whether gender equality in the UK is a polarizing issue among the younger demographics as in South Korea. So Professor Friedman, if so, what do you think are the driving forces of the phenomenon? Watchers and people here believe the country here in Korea needs to come up with a set of practical policy guidelines to promote gender equality and tackle the ongoing conflicts regarding the issue. Where do South Korea's gender equality policies stand in relation to other parts of the world, Professor Kim? And you just mentioned traditional masculinity, and that actually brings us to our next question to Professor Hwang. Given that most South Korean families have been and are still following traditions, can overcome these conventional conventional hurdles. Friedman, the economist, unveiled that South Korea ranked bottom among all OECD nations in the glass ceiling index, or actually among 29 OECD nations, an indicator of how women are being discriminated against at work. And the UK stood at 17th in the ranking, so just around the average. Can you elaborate on whether there are cases of employment discrimination towards women in the UK, and despite the government rollout policies? Kim, do you see a chance that the media's overwhelming coverage of the gender issue has perhaps further widened the social divide? I think that's all the time we have for today. Professor Hwang Myeon-jin and Professor Kim Jo-eun, thank you very much for your time and sharing your insights. Also, Professor Rosa Friedman, thank you for joining the program. And that wraps up this week's edition of The Point. Thank you for watching.